Hi, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame. One of the things I've learned about being a photographer is to always have my camera with me. And today, that's a lot easier to do with the existence of camera phones, but I always have my camera with me anyway, just because I'd like to get into that mindset. And one of the good things of always having a camera with me is that I get to witness the unexpected. And if you spend any time out in the street for any period of time, you get to see some unusual things. And a lot of those unusual things can be great fodder for a good photograph. But if you don't have your camera with you, you won't be able to document it. And a lot of the stuff that we photograph as street photographers are pretty uninteresting. People walking down the street, people talking on the street. There's not a whole lot happening, but every once in a while, you see something that's really unusual. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on because I think it's really encouraging to me when I see people out there making photographs that I wish I had made. And the only way I can ensure that I am able to do that myself is to always have my camera with me. Here we have a shot by Barry Lowman. This was shot with a Leica M8, shot at 180th of a second at f9.5. at ISO 320. Now, this is just a great shot. Here's a guy just sort of chilling out, drinking a bottle of water or soda pop. But the way he has found a place to lie down is really interesting. So obviously there wasn't a convenient bench or chair anywhere to be had. So he just made do with the chain from this fence. And the body language and the amazing way that he seems to have found some level of comfort here is amazing, amusing. But Barry does a lot of things right here because he just makes a wonderful composition where it's not just capturing this guy in this sort of unusual position, but he's also creating an interesting composition just as a result of all the things that he places in the frame. We have the guy that's sitting on the chain, that's resting on the chain. We have the discarded beer bottles there, which may or may not belong to him. We have the various posts. We have the bike. But we also have a really interesting color palette, don't we? We have the blue and the dark, the blue of his shirt, the dark of his jeans and boots. And then we have these sort of earth tones that surround him, including that sort of orangish yellow wall to the right. We have the bike there with the white, and it's just a great frame in terms of shapes. Yes, this guy is doing something really interesting in terms of his body language, but if you look at this image just in terms of shapes, you'll see a lot of repetition of pattern, repetition of shapes, things that complement each other in really interesting ways. Graphically, this is just a fantastic shot, but it's being open to these unexpected moments that can flip the switch in you to not only just capture the unusual part of it, but to make a good photograph of it. Because there's plenty of unusual stuff that we see on the street, stuff that we think makes a good photograph, but it's important not to get caught up in the moment, to just merely raise the camera to your eye, make a snapshot, and expect it to be a good picture. All those things that you've learned over the years about exposure, white balance, composition, all of those still apply. But it's so key to remember them so that when a moment like this presents itself, you're still thinking along those lines in order to make as good a photograph as you can, because otherwise you could miss out on this moment by simply creating a snapshot of it. And I really commend Barry for being really on top of his game when it came to making this photograph, because it's a great photograph. Fantastic. Here we have a shot by Lasse Persson. This was shot with a Nikon D60 at 160th of a second at f6.3, ISO 200. Now, if you've watched any of these videos for any length of time, you've heard me talk about people walking down the street, that it's a common motif in photography, and sometimes it can be a real challenge to find something interesting of someone simply walking down the street. Well, we have that here. So we have these two kids, one of whom is pushing the other one on the stroller, long after he's old enough to actually be in this thing. So that is unusual. It's very amusing. It's very humorous scene to capture. And that's great. And I love that Lasse here has captured this moment. But again, take a look at everything else that's happening in the frame. Everything else that's happening in the frame is really complementing what's happening here between these two boys. We have the guy in the dark suit with the papers in his hand. We have the older woman just in front of him checking her bag. We have another woman in the back with a red scarf moving towards the edge of the frame, as well as another woman who looks like she's about to walk into a storefront. And you have all these characters within the frame. So just imagine this scene without the two kids in the shot for a moment. And just imagine this scene with just these people in the frame. They would be placed in interesting areas within the frame, but if this area right here was just nothing, if it was just the sidewalk, this image wouldn't hold up. It's not just because these kids are really sort of an interesting thing to focus on. It's just because there would be this huge negative area here where nothing is going on. It just would be this negative space that would not link all these characters in to this shot. By having these kids in this frame, it does that. It anchors the image and creates a really nice flow between all the figures here. And it's just an added bonus that they're doing something interesting. If it was just a kid walking down here, or maybe even a dog, yeah, that might be an interesting shot. But the unusualness of this moment is what really makes it interesting. But the strength of the shot comes from paying attention to everything else that's happening in the frame. And I tell you from experience, it's really hard to remember this when you're seeing a moment and it's about to happen, or it is happening, and I'm fumbling with my camera. I've missed plenty of shots like this because I wasn't ready. The camera wasn't on, or it was in my bag, or some stupid reason. I always have my camera ready when I'm on the street because I don't know when moments like this are going to happen. And as rare as they may seem, they happen all the time. But I may not be in the street in order to be able to take advantage of it as a photographer. That's why I'm always pushing myself to always have my camera with me, always have it ready with all my settings and all that stuff, so that I'm not in the midst of trying to get my ISO corrector, change my white balance from what it was the day before, all of that stuff. It's about being prepared, because moments like this happen so fast that if you are not ready for them, it's just going to be another missed opportunity. And Lasse here just did a wonderful job in capturing this scene. Here we have a shot by Thexton. We don't have any XF information here. And unlike the previous two shots, there's nothing really quote-unquote interesting happening within the frame. There's no, funny or humorous or dynamic motion within it. But it's the juxtaposition of all these elements. The guy in the turban with the beard, the fairy in the background, the fence. All of those stuff play really well in the frame. And the relationship that Alan creates here is really interesting, but it's also something that can be unexpected for a lot of people who were probably walking around and seeing this scene. So, because a lot of times we see things singularly. We see a fairy, we see a guy with a beard, we see a fence. We see one thing, but we lose sight of everything else that's around that thing or that person. But when you raise the camera to your eye, suddenly you see those relationships, and what looks like it wouldn't make an interesting shot suddenly gets revealed as, wow, this could be really amazing. And I like that here because we have this linkage of white that happens, the white of the beard, the white of the fence, the white of the fairy. Again, this is a very graphic image with some great light. But when I'm talking about the unexpected, it's not about just people doing funny stuff on the street. The unexpected can often be recognizing the sort of connective tissue that connects all these disparate elements that usually have no relationship to each other at all, but within the context of the frame suddenly do. That's the kind of stuff I'm often hunting for when I'm out on the street. The stuff that's obvious is obvious, and I'll photograph that stuff, but what I'm really challenging myself to see are moments like this. Moments where all these different pieces that make up the world in any given moment can suddenly be brought together within the context of the frame and become something really interesting and remarkable and even beautiful. Of the three shots that I've shown you, this is the harder one to sort of get because it really calls on you to be really hyper aware, to be so conscious of what you are seeing and how you are reacting to things. You really have to sort of train your eye to see photographically, even without the camera to your eye, to sort of have a gut sense that there is some potential in this scene, and then raising your camera to your eye to finally sort of complete what you are sort of intuitively thinking has the potential for being a good shot. And at first you'll probably just keep raising the camera to your eye and try and figure it out, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But as you shoot, and especially if you have your camera with you all the time, you will start developing this sensibility. And shots like this will not be as elusive as you might think currently that they are. Well, I hope you enjoyed this short video. Think about the unexpected next time you go out shooting, especially this weekend. And if you want to contribute images to the Candid Frame Flickr pool, all you have to do is do a search on the Candid Frame on Flickr. And we have a pool here of thousands of photographers that submit some fantastic images week after week after week. There's just amazing images here, which I love to showcase each week in these videos. And if you've never heard of the Candid Frame, well, the Candid Frame is a podcast in which I feature interviews with some of the world's best photographers. We've been producing the show for over 10 years. We have over 300 interviews in our archive. Our last interview is with Gabriel Hill. He's a photographer from Switzerland that has been doing a personal project on refugees who have settled in his country of Switzerland. It's a real fascinating story, and I hope that you take a listen to it. The new episodes now appear on YouTube, but you can also listen to them on iTunes or any other place that you listen to podcasts. And we also have an app for Windows, for Android, and for Apple iOS, which is completely free, which gives you full access to all of our interviews. So check it out. So thanks again for joining me, and I will see you next time.